Hello and welcome. You're watching First Up. I'm Akshita Nandagopal. We're cutting across live to the Democratic National Convention where Bill Clinton is currently speaking.
And Chelsea's own very ambitious excursions, from Halloween parties in the neighborhood to a Viennese waltz gala in the White House. Hillary, first and foremost, was a mother. She became, as she often said, our family's designated worrier, born with an extra responsibility gene. The truth is, we rarely disagreed on parenting, although she did believe that I had gone a little over the top when I took a couple of days off with Chelsea to watch all 6 Police Academy movies back to back. When Chelsea was 9 months old, I was defeated for re-election in the Reagan landslide. And I became overnight, I think, the youngest former governor in the history of the country. We only had 2-year terms back then. Hillary was great. Immediately she said, okay, what are we going to do? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to get a house, you're going to get a job, we're going to enjoy being Chelsea's parents. And if you really want to run again, you got to go out and talk to people, figure out why you lost, tell people you got the message, and show them you still got good ideas. I followed her advice. Within 2 days, we had a house. I soon had a job. We had 2 fabulous years with Chelsea, and in 1982, I became the first governor in the history of our state to be elected, defeated, and elected again. I think my experience is it's a pretty good thing to follow her advice. The rest of the decade sort of flew by as our lives settled into a rhythm of family and work and friends. In 1983, Hillary chaired a committee to recommend new education standards for us as a part of, or in the response to, a court order to equalize school funding, and a report by a national expert that said our woefully underfunded schools were the worst in America. Typical Hillary, she held listening tours in all 75 counties with our committee. She came up with really ambitious recommendations. For example, that we be the first school in America, first state in America to require elementary counselors in every school because so many kids were having trouble at home and they needed it. So I called the legislature into session hoping to pass the standards, pass the pay raise for teachers, and raise the sales tax to pay for it all. I knew it would be hard to pass, but it got easier after Hillary testified before the Education Committee, and the chairman, a plain-spoken farmer, said, "Looks to me like we elected the wrong Clinton." Well, by the time I ran for president 9 years later, the same expert who said that we had the worst schools in America said that our state was one of the 2 most improved states in America. And that's because of those standards that Hillary developed. Now, 2 years later, Hillary told me about a preschool program developed in Israel called HIPPY, Home Instruction Program for Preschool Youngsters. The idea was to teach low-income parents, even those that couldn't read, to be their children's first teachers. She said she thought it would work in Arkansas. I said, that's great. What are we going to do about it? She said, oh, I already did. I called the woman who started the program in Israel. She'll be here in about 10 days and help us get started. Next thing you know, I'm being dragged around to all these little preschool graduations. And keep in mind, this was before any state even had universal kindergarten. And I'm being dragged to preschool graduations, watching these poor parents with tears in their eyes because they never thought they'd be able to help their kids learn. Now, 20 years of research has shown how well this program works to improve readiness for school and academic achievement. There are a lot of young adults in America who have no idea Hillary had anything to do with it, who are enjoying better lives because they were in that program. She did all this while being a full-time worker, a mother, and enjoying our life. Why? Well, she's insatiably curious, she's a natural leader, she's a good organizer, And she's the best darn change maker I ever met in my entire life. So, look, this is a really important point. This is a really important point for you to take out of this convention. If you believe in making change from the bottom up, if you believe the measure of change is how many people's lives are better, you know it's hard and some people think it's boring. Speeches like this are fun. Actually doing the work is hard. So people say, well, we need to change. She's been around a long time. She sure has. And she's sure been worth every single year she's put into making people's lives better. I can tell you this. If you were sitting where I'm sitting and you heard what I have heard at every dinner conversation, every lunch conversation, on every long walk, you would say, this woman has never been satisfied with the status quo in anything. She always wants to move the ball forward. That is just who she is. When I became president, with a commitment to reform health care, Hillary was a natural to head the health care task force. You all know we failed because we couldn't break a Senate filibuster. Hillary immediately went to work on solving the problems the bill sought to address one by one. The most important goal was to get more children with health insurance. In 1997, Congress passed the Children's Health Insurance Program, still an important part of President Obama's Affordable Care Act. It insures more than 8 million kids. There are a lot of other things in that bill that she got done, piece by piece, pushing that rock up the hill. In 1997, she also teamed with the House Minority Leader, Tom DeLay, who maybe disliked me more than any of Newt Gingrich's crowd. They worked on a bill together to increase adoptions of children out of foster care. She wanted to do it because she knew that Tom DeLay, for all of our differences, was an adopted parent, and she honored him for doing that. Now, the bill they worked on, which passed with an overwhelming bipartisan majority, led to a big increase in the adoption of children out of foster care, including non-infant kids and special needs kids. It made life better because she's a change maker. That's what she does. Now, when you're doing all this, real life doesn't stop. 1997 was the year Chelsea finished high school and went to college. We were happy for her, but sad for us to see her go. I'll never forget moving her into her dorm room at Stanford. It would have been a great little reality flick. There I was in a trance, just staring out the window, trying not to cry. And there was Hillary on her hands and knees, desperately looking for one more drawer to put that liner paper in. Finally, Chelsea took charge and told us ever so gently that it was time for us to go. So we closed a big chapter in the most important work of our lives. As you'll see Thursday night when Chelsea speaks, Hillary's done a pretty fine job of being a mother. And as you saw last night, beyond a shadow of a doubt, so has Michelle Obama. Now, fast forward. In 1999, Congressman Charlie Rangel and other New York Democrats urged Hillary to run for the seat of retiring Senator Pat Moynihan. We'd always intended to go to New York after I left office and commute to Arkansas, but this had never occurred to either one of us. Hillary had never run for office before, but she decided to give it a try. She began her campaign the way she always does new things, by listening and learning. And after a tough battle, New York elected her to the seat once held by another outsider, Robert Kennedy. And she didn't let him down. Her early years were dominated by 9/11. By working to fund the recovery, then monitoring the health of and providing compensation to victims and first and second responders. She and Senator Schumer were tireless, and so were our House members. In 2003, partly spurred on by what we were going through, she became the first senator in the history of New York ever to serve on the Armed Services Committee. So she tried to make sure people on the battlefield had proper equipment. She tried to expand, and did expand, health care coverage to reservists and members of the National Guard. She got longer family leave working with Senator Dodd for people caring for wounded service members. And she worked for more extensive care for people with traumatic brain injury. She also served on a special Pentagon commission to propose changes necessary to meet our new security challenges. Newt Gingrich is on that commission. He told me what a good job she'd done. I say that because nobody who has seriously dealt with the men and women in today's military believes they are a disaster. They are a national treasure of all races, all religions, all walks of life. Now, meanwhile, she compiled a really solid record, totally progressive on economic and social issues. She voted for and against some proposed trade deals. She became the de facto economic development officer for the area of New York outside the ambit of New York City. She worked for farmers, for winemakers, for small businesses and manufacturers, for upstate cities and rural areas who need more ideas and more new investment to create good jobs, something we have to do again in small town and rural America, in neighborhoods that have been left behind in our cities, in Indian country, and yes, in coal country. When she lost a hard-fought contest to President Obama in 2008, she worked for his election hard, but she hesitated to say yes when he asked her to join his cabinet, because she so loved being a senator from New York. So, like me in a different context, he had to keep asking. But as we all saw and heard from Madeleine Albright, it was worth the effort and worth the wait. As Secretary of State, she worked hard to get strong sanctions against Iran's nuclear program, and in what the Wall Street Journal no less called a half-court shot at the buzzer, she got Russia and China to support them. Her team negotiated the New START treaty with Russia to reduce nuclear weapons and reestablish inspections, and she got enough Republican support to get 2/3 of the Senate the vote necessary to ratify the treaty. She flew all night long from Cambodia to the Middle East to get a ceasefire that would avoid a full-out shooting war between between Hamas and Israel in Gaza, to protect the peace of the region. She backed President Obama's decision to go after Osama bin Laden. She launched a team. This is really important today. She launched a team to fight back against terrorists online and built a new global counterterrorism effort. We've got to win this battle in the mind field. She put climate change at the center of our foreign policy. She negotiated the first agreement ever where China and India officially committed to reduce their emissions. And as she had been doing since she went to Beijing in 1995 and said women's rights are human rights and human rights are women's rights. She worked to empower women and girls around the world and to make the same exact declaration on behalf of the LGBT community in America and around the world. And nobody ever talks about this much. Nobody ever talks about this much, but it's important to me. She tripled the number of people with AIDS in 4 countries whose lives are being saved with your tax dollars, most of them in Africa, going from 1.7 million lives to 5.1 million lives, and it didn't cost you any more money. She just bought available, FDA-approved generic drugs, something we need to do for the American people more. Now, you don't know any of these people. You don't know any of those 3.4 million people, but I'll guarantee you they know you. They know you because they see you as thinking their lives matter. They know you. And that's one reason the approval of the United States was 20 points higher when she left the Secretary of State's office than when she took it. Now, how does this square? How does this square with the things that you heard at the Republican convention? What's the difference in what I told you and what they said? How do you square it? You can't. One is real, the other is made up. And you just have to decide which is which, my fellow Americans. The real one had done more positive change-making before she was 30 than many public officials do in a lifetime in office. The real one, if you saw her friend Betsy Eveling vote for Illinois today, has friends from childhood through Arkansas, where she has not lived in more than 20 years, who have gone all across America at their own expense to fight for the person they know. The real one has earned the loyalty, the respect, and the fervent support of people who have worked with her in every stage of her life, including leaders around the world who know her to be able, straightforward, and completely trustworthy. The real one calls you when you're sick, when your kid's in trouble, or when there's a death in the family. The real one repeatedly drew praise from prominent Republicans when she was a senator and Secretary of State. So what's up with this? Well, if you win elections on the theory that government is always bad and will mess up a 2-car parade, a real change maker represents a real threat. So, your only option is to create a cartoon alternative. Then run against the cartoon. Cartoons are two-dimensional. They're easy to absorb. Life in the real world is complicated, and real change is hard. And a lot of people even think it's boring. Good for you, because earlier today, you nominated the real one. Listen.